Okay, welcome everybody to this episode of Thanatology Themes. I'm Carolyn, your host, therapist, and thanatologist. For this episode, I'm really excited. We have a guest who I really have been looking forward to speaking with for a long time. She has really unique experience. I'm so pleased that you agreed to be with us. I really, really am. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you because I'm talking about how amazing you are. So Dr. Rochelle Suri is a
Yes.
licensed marriage and family therapist based in Mumbai, India. She holds an MA in integral counseling psychology and a doctoral degree in East-West psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, which I just got back from San Francisco. It was fun. She lived in San Francisco for 10 years, before which she resided in India and the United Arab Emirates. Rochelle has extensive experience working with diverse populations and minorities and is dedicated to integrating Western psychology and Eastern spirituality within the realms of her psychotherapy practice. I really want to talk about that. Love that. That's great. She has presented her research at several national and international conferences and is also published in various peer-reviewed journals and books, which is where I think I found her. Currently, Rochelle is in private practice working with individuals, couples, and families. She is also, oh, I didn't know this, you're on the editorial board of the Journal of Humanistic
Yeah.
Psychology.
Yes.
So many wonderful, interesting things for us to talk about today. And I love the Western and Eastern. I feel like a lot of American and British and Canadian therapists also try to do that. But we're going to talk about really something very specific today, which might ebb and flow into our conversation, I think. So you wrote a paper, the Gift of Life, Death as Teacher and in the Aghori Sect. Is that how you pronounce it? Okay. And I just want to say that you were the first writer and you co-wrote it with Daniel B. Pitchford.
Correct.
So I love,
Pitchford, yes.
yeah, I just like to, of course, give credit to him as well, but I know you were the,
Absolutely.
yeah. So this is amazing. So I wanted to start with, it has become fashionable in the West, as I was saying, the US, Canada, a lot of places. We say to try to live an authentic life or make the most of life by having an awareness of death.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot of Westerners, though, are unsure how to do this. So it's become very popular, this idea, which I think is also based in Buddhism and other Eastern, but I think that we don't really know how to make that happen. So I came across your paper and I just wanted to start with a quote. To live authentically, one has to traverse the path of Gora, which I believe
Gora, yeah.
Gora means darkness, and emerge into
Mm-hmm.
Agora, which is light.
Yes.
Um, are these Sanskrit terms? Can you just talk about that for a minute, this idea?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So these are Sanskrit terms, and Sanskrit is the mother language of all Indian languages.
Mm.
And the two terms, Ghora and Aghora, all right? So Ghora actually means frightful, terrible. It means darkness, all right? And in Sanskrit and in Hindi and other Indian languages, when we put an which is the prefix before the word, it makes it the opposite generally. So that is Aghora, which is actually the illumined one or the absence of darkness. So Aghora and Ghora. So the transformation from darkness to light. And I'll take it a little further in terms of Sanskrit terms because an Aghori is someone who follows the Aghora path, right? And the Aghora path is belongs to the practice and the ideology of Tantra. That's a whole different conversation.
Mhm.
But the idea of Agora is pretty much it's about transformation. I mean, if the essence of it is the transformation from darkness to light. Aghoris are also called Avadut. or Aghar. So I'm introducing two other terms. And Avadhoot is one who is beyond any desire and lust and remains engrossed in himself. All right. So technically, one who is beyond any kind of sin which flourishes in the mind. So the transcendence of the material and the physical desires. The one who is situated in the heart of God, and who does not discriminate between any living being and animal. So we'll talk a little more about this in terms of the philosophy. So that's the Avadut. They're called, the Aghoris are also called that.
Mhm.
They're also called Oghar. Oghar is without a home. So one of the aspects that defines an Aghori is the fact that they're actually homeless, right? Because they renounce the family. That's one of the first what do you call it? Criteria for becoming an Aghori. And so they don't have a fixed abode, one who doesn't have a fixed abode. So we have Aghori, and the synonyms are Adhut and Oghar.
So I have a question for you because as you were talking, one thing that came up for me, I know in Buddhism, there's the idea of like non-attachment. Is this a sim?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, no. Yeah.
Uh,
But this is the principle of any Indian, or rather I should say Hindu religion, is about detachment.
mhm,
But the Aghoris, I think they go far beyond that, and we'll talk about that in terms of their philosophy
mhm.
a little later. But
Got
yes, fundamentally it is about detachment.
Okay. And you had mentioned detachment from spiritual, material.
Material, mental, emotional, with aspirations for for spiritual growth, for spiritual transformation.
Okay. And I mean, we will talk about it more, but even the idea that to be homeless is really detaching or non-attachment, right? Like that's really taking it to another step. I think a lot of people, Western, Eastern, either, I mean, I think that's a big step.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's one thing to be rendered homeless due to one's circumstances, and then it's another thing to take the vow of renunciation and actually not have an abode which is fixed, and to wander and depend on, the charity of other people. Um, in fact, in Buddhism, you had Gautama Buddha who did that, right? He renounced his
Yeah.
entire princedom
Hmm.
and literally was a wanderer.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
similar concept.
Yeah. Right. Siddhartha, wait, no. Um,
Siddhartha.
he
Yes.
was a
Buddha
prince,
Siddhartha.
gave it all
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of segue this into, um,
Hmm.
I think we should jump ahead. I was gonna, well, okay, so there's so much to talk about. I don't
I
know.
know there is.
I do want to talk about the history, and I know we want to you have some books to share and some photos. Um,
Hmm.
I'm gonna maybe introduce it because the dictionary definition had
Mm.
uncouth, unclean, sadistic versus mild-mannered and well-groomed, and that was a piece
Mm.
of it. But I know there's so much more.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give us a little bit of the history of, and is it called the Aghori tribe? Is that
No, they're not a tribe, they're a sect.
sect?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, they're a religious sect.
Okay.
So yes, the dictionary definition is uncouth, and unclean and sadistic, because there's the vernacular understanding of the term Aghori, even in India, is often ascribed to the idea of Aghoris being satanic worshippers, or following a very sadistic extreme cult, which is very far from the truth. Um, and this idea has also been announced because the Aghoris are a relatively secret sect in India. You'll rarely see them,
Mm.
and because they're very reclusive. All right. So as a result, they're misunderstood, and they're especially misunderstood because they do have some aberrant and inappropriate behaviors and rituals, which we will talk about a little later. So to the layperson, it seems like you are looking at either a really, really sadistic person or a crazy person,
Mm.
right? Within urban settings, or just in modern times, they would be looked at someone with a mental disorder, with a mental illness,
Can,
right?
can I
Um,
bring up a picture? Is
mhm.
that okay if I do that while you're speaking?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Please continue, but I'm going to do a screen share. I think it
yeah.
would be helpful. Okay.
Yeah, just to get a visual understanding of why I'm saying what I'm saying. But then you have, many authors, and I've cited in my paper the author Gupta, and she described her encounters with the Aghoris as conventional in their appearance and manner, being well groomed and mild mannered by local standards. So Aghori also can happen just through practice. It doesn't have to just, you don't have to have the whole shebang in modern times. And in fact, in the book, this is a fabulous book that I recommend, Aghora at the Left Hand of God by Dr. Robert Svoboda. His guru was the Aghori Vimlananda, who came from a very, very rich, wealthy background in Bombay. So
Mm.
you have your traditional Aghoris that have the garb and the rituals that are very archaic in nature, but then you also have the modern Aghoris who are very sophisticated and do not even appear um, as a typical Aghori.
Can you see this photo?
Yes, I can. And so that is an Aghori Baba.
Oh, there we go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to describe about this photo in particular?
Yes. So the skulls are a very important and significant part of the Aghori sect. And there's a story behind this, which I will talk about a little later. But it's used for rituals, it's used as a begging bowl for food, for alms. It's also used as a vessel to eat from, to drink from. You see the Aghori, usually this one is dressed, so that's nice, but usually Aghoris are either in the nude
Mm.
or just with a loincloth covering them. Um, yeah, I mean that from this picture just about, I mean, these are the main things that I can say. I think
Mhm.
there's another picture, but we can look at that a little later.
Okay. Um, and I'm gonna go ahead and oh, oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Here we go. 1 second. And
Mhm.
here's the other one. Here we go.
Yeah, so this is your typical Aghori, and the vital traits are the body which is smeared with the ash, and this is actually the ash from the cremation grounds, the smashan, that is the Sanskrit word for the cremation ground, where you could say it is the home of the Aghoris, because the identification with death as being the only liberator, the incinerator of all limitations. Um, they're black. Black is a very typical color that they associate with, and you see them in black garbs. You see the trident. I don't know if you can see the trident. Can we minimize the picture? Is the trident there in the picture? To the one sitting down?
Yes.
Yeah, so the trident is the symbol of Lord Shiva,
Okay.
who is the first, who is the first Aghori in the world. Um, you see at the bottom, there's a red picture. That's Kalima,
This right here?
right? So yeah, it's not so clear, but that's the goddess. So they are also worshippers of the goddess. Here's from the Bhairavi. That's the Sanskrit word. In the other picture, you see the man with a chillum, what we call a chillum, which is like your pipe,
Oh,
and
right.
they use a lot of intoxicants. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. So marijuana, hash, and we'll get into that a little later. But yeah, they're lost. You can look at them. There's that idea of there's a disconnection from the world,
Mhm.
and um, they literally are in their own world. And that is, I mean, there's so a gazillion paths to transformation in Hinduism. There are a gazillion paths to enlightenment, to liberation, and Aghora is one of them.
Mhm. Okay. I thought I'm gonna stop screen sharing now, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. I think that was helpful to see those.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
yeah. Okay. Anything else you feel is important to add, just so we understand? Also, are they in a certain region of India geographic?
Yeah. Yes. So let's dive into a little bit on the history and also the meaning because I'll cover this question. So like I said, so there's a trilogy of gods in Hinduism, which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is the creator. He has created this universe. Vishnu is the preserver who keeps everything intact. And then when things get out of hand, Lord Shiva comes, steps in and destroys everything. And then the whole process of creation, preservation, and destruction starts. And that's the unending cycle.
Mhm.
Okay. So Lord Shiva is going to be a very important person in our conversation. And he's the Lord of Destruction. And he's believed to be the first Aghori of the world.
Mhm.
Okay, and I'll explain why. I also want to add that you'll see Aghoris are generally men. It is seldom that women are consecrated into the sect.
Mhm.
Now, because again, I think it's because Shiva is a male god. So this is something the Aghoris go back to many centuries where religion, for most part, was dominated by the male.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so women are rarely consecrated. Now, coming to your question on the region, where you will find Aghoris the most are in Varanasi, which was previously called Benares, which was the British colonial name.
Mhm.
And that is in the north of India, in the state of Uttar Pradesh. And Varanasi is considered the cultural, spiritual, and religious metropolis of northern India for centuries,
Mhm.
right? And this city was referred to as Kasi or Kashi, Kashi,
Mhm.
which is, yeah, it's a Sanskrit word which is the luminous one, okay, which is a symbolic appreciation of the city's prominence for the arts and culture.
Mhm.
So it is also so believed that Lord Shiva, okay, who, like I said, is the destroyer of the universe in Hindu cosmology, he created the city,
Mhm.
therefore making Kashi or Benares or Varanasi the most religious hub of India. So it's a very potent city, and I've traveled there several times, and every time I go there, I'm just amazed by the order and the chaos. I mean, that's India in general, but this is exceptionally, this order and chaos is exceptionally highlighted when you sit on the ghats, overlooking the Ganga, and you see the action, and you see Manikaram Ghat, which is, by the way, a ghat that is 24 hours. It's a funeral pyre where multiple funeral pyres are there and
Right.
it's burning 24 hours because there are people that come from all over the country because they consider that a very powerful cremation ground. And that is also the home, the Smashan, right? Also the home to the Aghoris. Um, so it is, as per history, Benares or Varanasi is the home and birthplace of the Aghori sect. Um, it like I said, it is also a city of polarities where materialism and spirituality encounter each other in a way that I'm telling you cannot be explained, only experienced. So
Mhm.
um so the Aghoris, sorry, that's a cat who wants to be part of this conversation. Uh So they strongly identify with Lord Shiva. Okay. And so the main center of the Aghoris is in Varanasi. Now, the ashram. Okay, the ashram or the spiritual community of the Aghoris is situated in Varanasi, where Hina Ram Aghori Samadhi. Samadhi is the final resting place. It's a Sanskrit word which means final resting place, resides. And this is an important place for Aghori pilgrimages. Now, Ram was an ascetic who is said to have lived to approximately 150 years of age during the second half of the 18th century.
Wow.
And going further back into the history of the Aghori sect. Now, the Aghoris were wanderers. Remember, I said without a home. So they were wanderers. So there wasn't much information that was collected for a very, very long time. So we really don't know a definitive history of the Aghoris. So we're just surmising based on information. But more recently, from Kinaram, who also collated information, and like the ashram exists in Varanasi. But going back to further into the history of the Aghori sect, it is believed that the northern Indian Kapalika, now I'm introducing another sect, Kapalika sect, were the founding fathers of the Aghoris.
Mm.
And yeah, these religious groups appeared around between the 7th and the 12th centuries. So we're
Mm.
talking far. Now, the term Kapalika is derived from the word which is Kapalin, 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 or one who carries the skull. So, like I said earlier, the skull is a predominant feature of the Aghori. Lawrence, a very established writer, he described the Kapalin
Mm.
as an individual with a skull and staff living on arms, announcing his deed as he begs and eating little fruit. So the wanderer with the skull, the Kapalin. Now this is really I love Hindu mythology, and I'm going to introduce a story here. So according to Hindu mythology, the first Kapalika is guess whom? You want to take a guess, Caroline?
I mean, I would have, well, it's not Siddhartha.
No, it's Shiva.
Shiva.
If
Oh,
he's the first
right,
Aghori,
right. Who they are. Okay, I should have gotten that right.
actually, he's the first Aghori, so which makes him also the
Yeah,
first Kapalika.
yeah,
Remember, Shiva is beyond time, right? He's Adi Yogi. Adi means beyond.
yeah.
Um, So, in the Puranas, which is one of the multitudes of Hindu scriptures, it is believed that Shiva cut off Brahma, remember Brahma, the creator, cut off his head in a fit of rage because Shiva is all about destruction, right? So, he went into a fit of rage, cut off one of Brahma's head because Brahma has three heads. And because of this very offensive act, he was condemned to wander the universe with the skull of Brahma attached to his hands.
Mm.
So now you're getting the picture.
Right.
So as a result, he had to use it as a begging bowl because it was attached to his hand for alms and food, right? He couldn't take the skull out. And so it took him 12 years wandering in this manner until he arrived at Varanasi,
Mm.
where the kapal is the Sanskrit word for skull,
Mhm.
magically detached from his hand and fell in the spot that is now referred to as Kapala Mochana. So Kapala means skull and Mochana means the act of freeing. So Kapala Mochana means the place where the skull was freed.
Mm.
So is that clear? I mean,
Yeah.
I know there are too many characters here and too many words here, but
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's important to know how the skull is a big part of
yeah,
how, yeah,
yes.
very important. Yeah.
So that in a nutshell is the history of the Aghoris. But I want to say this. So while we talked about the visuals of the Aghoris, Now this is critical because the most important aspect is their religious and philosophical ideology, right? Which is rooted in Advaita Vedanta. Now, Advaita, again, A in front of Dvaita. Dvaita means duality. Advaita would be
Clarity, non-duality. I'm going to say clarity,
non-duality,
non-duality.
non-duality, right? So Advaita, yeah, which is one of the schools of Vedanta philosophy. Now, Vedanta is the umbrella, and you have Dvaita, Advaita, and all other such schools of thought. Advaita Vedanta affirms the oneness of the individual soul, that's
Mhm.
Atman, God, Brahman, and the universe. So Advaita says there is no duality. All right. So in other words, the essence of Advaita philosophy is the acceptance of Brahma, the creator, and Atman, the soul, as a single identity.
Mhm.
And so, according to this philosophy, there is no difference between God and man, self and other, good
Mhm.
and bad, purity and impurity. They are all Brahman. And this is the message that the Aghoris are trying to live through their behaviors, through their rituals, and through their beliefs. That there's everything is one. You know, Hinduism typically is so focused on purity
Mm.
and does everything in order to stay, away from defilement. So you
Mm.
have the caste system, right? The caste system is your blatant hierarchy and differentiation of the levels of purity, the most highest being Brahman and the most lowest being the Dalits or the untouchable. And
Mm.
so the Aghoris, detest all of this and say there is no hierarchy, there is no differentiation, there is only oneness. But
Mhm.
they go to the extreme,
Mhm.
right? And the extremes are the rituals that we will look at, which is, you know, meditating on corpses, eat cannibalism, right? Drinking their urine, eating their feces, not, not showering, for months on end, smearing your body with ashes. These are things, I mean, just the thought of it makes me, it's revolting, right? Because it is the idea that those are impure, those are bad, stay away.
Yeah.
But that is the main philosophy. We have to go beyond the visuals of the Aghori and really understand what it is that they're trying to imbibe and you know uh, share in terms of their life and their message. And I'll share a quote actually by one of the most renowned guru of India, Sri Satya Sai Baba. So he described the basis of Advaita philosophy. He says, though the appearances may be different and there may be varieties of experiences,
Mm.
it is asserted that in all these there is one thing present, namely the unifying spirit. Right? So how do you differentiate and how do you say, this is pure, this is impure, this is dirty, this is good, this is bad, when there is just the unifying spirit?
Mhm. I mean, so that's amazing. You've said a lot of really, really important things. And,
Mm.
the idea of duality reminds me a little bit of in Buddhism, they talk about the middle way. And,
Mm.
sometimes with my clients, and this isn't probably the same, but, I think we set up these, like you're saying, if it's good, it's bad. If it, you use the word duality, which is true.
Yes.
I often say, a lot of times in
Polarities?
polarity, or I even think in like DBT or something, we'll say like black and white thinking, right? And
Right.
even with my clients, I'll say, can we, I mean, I like the idea of unifying or trying to, non-duality, right? This is a
Mm.
nice way to introduce to
Mhm.
people. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. So you've talked about
Mhm.
so many different important themes here, because
Yeah.
the idea of non-duality, there's a piece where I'm like, oh, that's very healthy, right? Or that could be a more positive thing for many of us. At the same
Mm.
time, the way the Agori do it, as you said, is something a little too extreme, not a little,
Yes.
more extreme,
Right. Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
want to go back and ask you about something that I maybe I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the funeral pyre and this place where, or I've heard people use the charnel grounds. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
same thing? Is a charnel, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
The
so
cremation grounds.
what's it called?
Cremation grounds, right? So
Crema-
in Hinduism, cremation, it's not what you see in the West, which is typically a a Christian you know process. And in Hinduism, it's about having the fire, right?
Mhm,
And then you place the body, the corpse on the fire,
mhm,
and you put some more wood on it, and then you douse it with kerosene, and then you
mhm,
light it, and you literally watch the body burn till till it reaches a state where the ashes then are collected and merged with one of the holy rivers,
mm,
with the idea that this will, um, this will lead to liberation or moksha.
mm. And is this, you said people from all over the country come to,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So this is a
yeah.
practice, this is a lot of people do this practice. This wouldn't just be Aghori or certain, this is a
No, 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 no. The funeral. What are you talking? The funeral pyres?
yeah,
The
yeah, which I think, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I understand.
That's typical. That's
Yeah,
typical Hindu,
yeah,
ceremony when one passes away.
yeah. And I,
Unlike
go ahead.
unlike Westerners, where there's the mass, and then you have them in their grave, and then you dig 6 feet under, and then you place the grave, you know, in the not the grave. What is it called? The casket.
Yeah,
You
or the
place that in the grave.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, more and more Americans, and maybe in other countries too, are choosing cremation. And
Mm.
there's a big,
Electric.
what's that?
Is it the electric cremation or with
It's in and here in Brooklyn there's a beautiful crematorium that they have as part of Green
Mm.
Cemetery. But people don't watch it happen. And I've had clients who wanted to be able to watch their family member. And at the time, we were told like one or two of the places that does it, there's one time, like 4 o'clock is the only time a family member is allowed to come in, but I don't even think they actually let you watch it. You sit and they put the body into, I think it's like a machine, and then the ashes come out on the other side,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
actually see it. And
Mm.
I mean, I don't think it's changed. This was a couple years ago that you had to like plan the time and you had to work with the funeral director. And I feel like at that time they also discouraged it. So I just wanted to point out this very difference. And I've done a Buddhist meditation, and I know this is going back to the beginning of our episode. It's a popular practice here in the West where people do this death meditation, and someone with experience will take you through, you see yourself dying. And usually a part of it is that you see yourself on the pyre, funeral pyre, or the cremation charnel grounds. And that
Hmm.
has been a part of when you do them. But most of us don't know what that looks like here.
Yes,
So
yes,
someone will take us through this meditation. And I'm like, I mean, I did that meditation about 12 years ago. And at the time, I was like, I'm kind of winging this part of it because I don't really know what that means. But it's become very
yeah.
popular in our culture that we talk about this, or that we do this meditation. And so you're really shedding
Mhm.
light on something. And so I think this is really interesting and important for Westerners to hear. That's why I'm kind of going into this piece. Um, I also had a question for you, but I don't know, any comments about that or thoughts?
No, I mean, gosh, I mean, there's so much to say on this, right? Because um, oopsie, uh, it really is, it's, it's, I mean, it really leaves me speechless. Also, there is a very fascinating video which I will share with you the link on YouTube. Where about this, I forget his name, and he's an Iranian American scholar who did a full interview and a recording, a documentary on the Aghori practice. And so he takes you also through everything that I'm just talking to you. So I
Wonderful.
will send that as well, so you can add it as well as
Thank
a
you.
resource.
So no, that's wonderful. I think this is, like I said, really important. Uh, this is something, like I said, a lot of Americans, Canadians, and I think other people are really excited about this idea,
Mm,
but we don't really know what it means or looks like. Um,
mm,
I also
mm.
wanted to ask you a question. Is part of it, do you think there's a pertinent piece of it that the Aghoris happen to be very close to the charnel ground? This seems to be really a part of their belief system.
Yes, yes. Now, this is so, like I said earlier, every path which leads to enlightenment and transformation is different, and there are several of them in Hinduism. The Aghoris identify with Tantra and
Mhm.
using the idea of death, that one needs to live in order to die, and one needs to literally die in order to live, and live in the spiritual sense, right? So death is a pivotal aspect of the philosophy, embracing death, not death, but embracing death, right? And so the cremation grounds is the one of the, it can't get more blatant than that in terms of a reminder of death and what it signifies.
Mhm.
So there is a very strong connection. And so you also see Aghoris with the ashes that are smeared on their body.
Mhm.
Because again, it's the reminder of death, which is the final resting place and the only liberator, the only equalizer and the only liberator.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, is this a good time I'm going to jump in with a quote from your paper.
Yes.
Um, and you did talk about darkness and you have a quote, how the Aghori vigorously accept death.
Mhm.
And maybe this is
Mhm.
a way to talk about the rituals. You had already mentioned the possible cannibalism or what that symbolizes. Is this right? The vigorously accepting death? Is this a segue into those rituals, practices?
Yeah, I'm gonna use another statement here from my paper, which is I've written, through these rituals, the Aghori comes to realize the elusive nature of all phenomena
Mhm.
and the ultimate truth of selflessness. It
Mhm.
could be said then that the Aghoris use their rituals symbolically to transform the prosaic mind into one that is only concerned with the divine,
Mhm.
right? And that's the transformation that we're talking about. Um, So it is the rituals, again, to get the visuals of the Aghori and their rituals, which are quite bizarre, at least to the layperson, and hence misinterpreted as, abnormal and inappropriate
Mhm.
behaviors, because we have the consumption of intoxicants such as alcohol and marijuana,
Mhm.
intake of human and animal flesh and secretions, meditating on corpses, wearing of skulls. They'll also sometimes wear, skulls and bones, and of course, ill-clad bodies. Like I said, a lot of them, there is a lot of, I mean, there is nudity, but it's not in order to, make a statement or for shock impact, but more symbolic. So these are some of the explicit characteristics of the Aghori. So let's look at some of them.
Mhm.
The first one being the consumption of intoxicants. Now, I'm going to read a quote from Dr. Swoboda, and he says, "When an Aghori takes a lot of intoxicants, he feels like going to the smashan and being alone with his thoughts. He
Mhm.
feels like telling everyone he meets, leave me alone. And if he covers himself with ashes and remains naked and shouts obscenities, no one is likely to come near. And he can be in his mood all day long.
Mhm.
This is one of the reasons Aghoris act the way they do,
Mhm.
right? So they really just want to get lost in their world.
Mhm.
hence the use of the intoxicants. Um, and want to be left alone. I want to be lost in my world and I want to be left alone so I can focus on the divine. Cannibalism, right? So I just want to make a statement here that Aghoris do not deliberately kill people for their flesh.
Right.
That's the usual connotation with cannibalism. But instead, it is the flesh of the corpses brought to the cremation grounds that they consume. So this human flesh is eaten raw, though at times it is roasted or, over an open fire. And why do they do this, Charlotte? Because eating human flesh is yet another reminder to the Aghori that there exists no distinction between good or bad, between human and animal flesh. All right. And Gupta, who's also an author, I'm gonna read her quote. She says, "It is important to keep in mind that whether or not one has actually eaten human flesh is not the point. It is the act of subscribing to the idea of eating human flesh and other revolting substances that is important." Uh, and like I said earlier, apart from human flesh, the Aghoris are also known to drink urine, eat feces. I mean, in the video that I will share the link to, you can see that he's actually peeing and drinking his, urine. And again, these practices are very extreme, so you have to. Not everyone can be on the path of the, of Aghor. But they're really meant to kill the ego and which derail the human perception of reality. Um, we also have the meditation on, meditating on corpses. And the meditation on corpses is really, again, symbolic in terms of the idea of transformation of Shava to Shiva. Shava is the Sanskrit word for corpse. And Shiva is obviously the higher, power. So the reminder of the importance of transformation, and there are rituals that they perform also while on the couch that help them reach, have that transcendence, not transformation, the transcendence from Sava to Shiva. So again, the corpse is a reminder of death, which I say is the final and only liberator. The use of skulls, okay, it's here, I'm going to read another quote from Gupta, and she recounted her, experience with the Aghori, who described the use of skulls in great detail. He said, "It is believed that after death, in the top of the skull, there clings a minute particle of prana, is the Sanskrit word for life force of the deceased,
Right.
using mantras and certain offerings, especially alcohol, and Aghor sadhana summons the spirit to return to the body, and gaining control over it harnesses its service or its services." So they keep the idea is that they will use certain offerings and certain mantras and really command the spirit to work for them. And this is again another misnomer with the Aghoris, which is, of course, you get all kinds of Aghoris, but the whole idea of black magic, right? Can be looked at from this point of view, where I can summon the spirit of a corpse to now work for me. So that's human skull is very important because they really believe it has a life force, and we can use life force for something positive or something destructive as well. Um, Another Aghori practice is renouncing his clothes. So oftentimes you can, identify an Aghori with wearing nothing but a loincloth or even sometimes in the nude. And again, this act is meant to allow the Aghori to overcome their feelings of shame, right? Because shame comes when we identify with the body, right? And we all know that today, because we're all trying to look a particular way. And it's also aimed at the renunciation of the material world and the attachment to material objects. So not only do they renounce their families, but they also and their homes, they also renounce the clothing. Human ashes is meant as an imitation of Shiva, okay, because Shiva, being the first Aghori, also spent time at the Smanshan where he meditated a lot. And it is also believed to protect the Aghori from diseases. I
Mm.
don't know whether that's true or not, but
Mm.
that's the belief. Um, but so those are some of the rituals, the more obvious rituals. I mean, the ones that you see on a external basis. But there are far many other rituals that are obviously secretive and elusive that at least I'm not aware of.
Mhm.
But again, I reiterate, it is the central feature that pronounces the Aghori's practice to be spiritual in nature is the monoistic or the non-dualistic approach to
Mhm.
life, right? Philosophy, where there's absolutely no duality, but just one reality.
Yeah, and I do want to be mindful of the time. Um,
Hmm.
and I do, so I'm just gonna say, I everything that you said in those main rituals, those big ones that you just kind of mentioned, I really get the non-duality. I mean, I know there's specific reasons for
Mm.
each one, but the overall theme is,
Mm.
it's all the same. It's all, that
Yeah,
non-duality is this overarching theme connected to all
absolutely. Yeah.
really, yeah, really
Yeah.
amazing. Well, like I said, I want to be mindful of our time here.
Hmm.
I really appreciate your time. I know you're in a very different time zone than I am.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's, so I do want to be mindful and appreciative of your generous time here. Um, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to add or you wanted to bring back into the conversation?
Uh, Just to show you the other books.
Mhm.
This is the second part, again by Dr. Svoboda, which is Aghora 2 and Kundalini. And the third one is Aghora 3 and the Law of Karma.
Oh,
Um,
the
yeah,
love. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So very, all written by him and also information shared by his guru, which was an Aghori, Vimlananda from Bombay. Um, But no, I mean, like I said, I can go on and on. I mean, there's no end to this topic. It's really fascinating, and that just this topic also opens up channels for so many other conversations, right? Because Hinduism is so vast.
It really does. Because I think it's so important, as you're saying, to understand the history and all of the reasons behind their thinking and what they do. And
Mm.
I feel like there is I don't know if there's a bridge, but there's so many pieces of it that Westerners recognize as helpful for us. So that's a
Yeah.
big piece too. What are those pieces? These ideas, themes, ideology has become really popular in the West in the past, 15, 20, I don't know how many years. And how
Mm.
do we make that work? And even in Mumbai, most people are not going to walk around in their loincloth and do these kinds of things.
No.
Right? But I do think there's a lot of important pieces of it that we can learn from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, I'm tying it back to the paper now. I mean, the whole idea of working and researching on the Aghori sect is to look at death, right? And death as a teacher, because it can really allow for an authentic life, for authentic living. And that was the whole connection in the paper that we published. Because especially in Eastern philosophy and in Hinduism, the concept of death is not regarded as something to be feared, but to be embraced for what it is, which is the great transformer. It is the great transformer. It is an equalizer, and I don't think there's anything that is an equalizer except for death. I mean,
I
um,
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll just add before we wrap up, when I worked in hospice, in
mm,
Brooklyn, I worked with everybody. I had very wealthy clients. I had a couple celebrities or family members, and then I had people in public housing. We tried to serve people in homeless shelters. We tried to serve people who were in kind of units. We really, like
Mm,
you said, it was this equalizer, right? It was across the board. It was
yeah.
regardless of race, class, gender, education, um,
Hmm.
e-
Hmm.
everybody,
Yeah. Yeah.
interest. And I'll just say, sometimes when you're a social worker, people say, what population do you work with? I have a friend who's very high up with the VA, with the veterans, right? Some people tend to work more with children. So sadly, hospice, I mean, we had veterans. I did have some pediatric patients. I had everybody, right? As you're saying, everybody dies. So it's can be very sad and a part of life, right? Yeah.
Yes. But how can we symbolically uh, use death as a reminder um of non-duality is actually the message of the Aghoris. And so by understanding and appreciating and at least attempting to live, a very non-dualistic life, how can we reach the divine?
Mhm.
Because according to the Aghoris, according to Advaita Vedanta, there is only oneness. That is a unifying spirit.
Um,
So hence the path to spiritual transformation.
and I know we have to wrap up, but it's interesting because you said
Yes.
embrace, which embracing death. I feel one of the words we're using here in the West is accepting death. So maybe we first have to accept it before I don't even know if we're ready to
Yeah.
embrace. So that's
Yeah.
this is a very rich conversation because I think there's many pieces to it. A lot of people agree with this theory, or I don't know, hypothesis word you want to use, of it's true.
Mm.
We do understand, we embrace, maybe even embracing or accepting death helps us live our life. I do think there is a big question of how to do that, right?
Yes. Yes. For the next episode.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. You are
You're
such an
welcome.
expert on this in this field, and
Hardly, hardly, hardly.
well, I really appreciate you opening up the conversation and educating me and all of our listeners about this. I think it's a really important piece for us to bring in, like we're saying, and trying to marry this with all of these ideas.
Yes. And thank you so much for igniting, rather reigniting the interest in the Aghoris, which I had, lost. Because I only published this paper in 2010. So thanks to you, I've gone and repurchased all the books that I needed and immersing right back in. So I might be an expert maybe in a couple of years.
Oh, good. Oh, wonderful. Because this is a good ongoing conversation and it's something that's going to continue. Really, I think this is a really important topic. So, um,
Yes.
thank you so much, Dr. Suri.
Welcome. Yes, you're welcome, Cameron, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Thanatology Themes. Thank you.